Hello and welcome to the Sonic no MSG updated tutorial. I am Focus, and I have decided to help and do this for the plethora of new runners that have come to the scene, and I think it'd be very good to have a few updates since Liam's tutorial. Now, Trips, or Liam, made a tutorial back in 2016 or so for this route, and since then a lot of new things have actually come about in 06, and I wanted to make this video to try and showcase some of the safer strats and some of the newer strats that have come about. And so, firstly, what I'm going to do is instead of going directly onto an OSG sort of file, or just, starting up the game anew and playing through and just commentating, I'd rather, for now, go through my no MSG file, which, if you're already running the game, or you're planning to run the game, or you're in the midst of preparing for running the game, I recommend that you make a separate no MSG file for practice. Now, this is separate from the ILs file, or just a completed file you have, because it'll be you essentially play through the route once, and unlock what you need to for the normal route. So that'd be red gem, blue gem, you could have green gem if you want. I'll also explain why I don't have green gem, and sky gem, not to mention all the power-ups to go with that, and you only register RTA runs on this file. So in practice, when you look at trial select, you know that the times you have there are only your best RTA times, not your best IL times. And so, for example, here, my best Kingdom Valley that I've gotten and saved in this file is 346, but it's not my IL world record. It's not my IL PB by far. And so it's a really good measure of seeing how you go, and how much you've improved, and sort of gives you little goals to reach when you're derusting. Speaking of derusting, I'm going to show a few little things when you load up the full 100% file. Now, the 100% file, when you have the game completed, will load you up at the last possible hub world location that you can go to. In this case, in Sonic's story, it is the Soliana Castle Town, right before Aquatic Base. And this is a very good way to practice when you've been out of 06 for a while, I think. Is to do bells, then go to Aquatic Base, and then do Egg Wyvern, because you have very good hub movement, a good hub movement practice. You have a very skill requiring and somewhat demanding stage, which I think is always a good way to start off with one of the harder ones, but also arguably one of the most fun. And then you have Egg Wyvern, which is pretty much the epitome of the annoyance of all bosses. Now with bells, I have a slightly different strat from what Liam takes, and in that I do a few things differently. So this first bell is normal. I don't think any runner doesn't take the normal route from over there, going up to the spring and whatnot. Here there are two ways of going. There's dropping down and going through here, which I think is a bit riskier because of NPCs and because of other movement. As you can see, I had a bit of difficulty with that, because there's a lot of people that can lurk on the streets. But instead of that, I don't go that route, usually. As you can see, bumping is quite a big issue in 06. I instead go above the roofs here, because it's a lot more consistent, and I think there's just a lot less obstacles, so there's a lot less risk. Not to mention, it's still quite fast, and doesn't waste that much time. You still have to go through this part, though, to return to the normal strat that I take. So, another key point I want to make is that if you are in any immediate danger of bumping into something, the first thing you should do is kick. Because Sonic has invincibility frames when he's kicking, and so that will prevent you from bumping. Sometimes it can prevent you from bumping for so long that it actually essentially allows you to avoid the bump altogether and just pass any walking NPC despite kicking into them. That's faster, obviously, because you don't completely come to a full standstill and have to speed up once more. So I think that's a very good strat if you're about to hit into a light pole or an NPC of some sort to do that, because it's very useful. Now, normally Liam would take this route, so going down here and going through these alleyways, which, I mean, it is faster, it's been tested and shown to be faster, but there is usually a lot of NPCs that sort of align around this area, and that can cause a lot of issues when you're not prepared for them. Because you can blue... Okay, camera's a bit wonky here. But you can blue gem, and you can kick. The issue is, though, you'll probably still bump into them anyways before you can kick. And so I'm just going to go back and show the ease of my route, which again involves roofs, because apparently I love them. So, my section would go the same route as his would, but instead, it would take that spring that you see right here. The spring is very useful, because it pushes you right onto these roofs, which have a clear shot towards the shop, with nothing in sight. And you can simply bounce place it down here, and enter the shop to buy the Sky Gem. That is a lot more consistent, albeit it is slightly slower than the fastest alleyway you can get. Although the alleyway, if you bump into something, will waste a significant amount of time. So I would say, just do the roofs, honestly. Now, Sky Gemming from here to here is the exact same. You can Sky Gem into this sort of space here. But be warned, because it is very risky and only saves about a second, if even. That's because there's some collision over here, which can register Sonic as being above the water when he finally stops moving, and as a result that can lead to your death, which you don't want, honestly. I'm going to enter Aquatic Base here just to show a few new strats, or a few, not new necessarily, but a few key differences that I take in my route, which make them a lot safer and a lot easier. I remember Liam recommended in his video to avoid the dash panels at any cost, and that's the case for some things. Like this section, you can hit some of the dash panels. This one, the final two are fine, but the first two are quite slow. As I'll show here. You can avoid all of them. It is possible to, but if there is no negatives of essentially hitting the dash panel, you probably lose about a second at most. And the risk versus reward there, bumping into something or hitting the dash panel, you should almost always hit the dash panel if you're worried about hitting into something, simply because it is faster. But blue gemming without any error is obviously the faster route. Now, I noticed some people had some issues with this section. Now, Sonic has two ways of throwing the Sky Gem. When on ground, Sonic will go into first-person mode and then launch it at wherever place you aim at. Whereas in the sky, Sonic will just throw it at the base trajectory of your height, relative to your height, I should say. So he'll throw it a certain direction at the specific trajectory of a normal one from the height you land at and the way you're facing. So it's actually easier when clipping through stuff to jump and then launch the Sky Gem, because essentially you'll know that it'll always go through. And that's a lot quicker than waiting on the ground for the first-person mode to kick in. So that's actually a much better route than trying to aim first-person, which I know some people have done. So make sure you jump when you're clipping with the Sky Gem, because that's the best route and the best way to go through any clipping. The only time it's useful in RTA is this one. And now here's a section I want to talk about. Liam specifically talked about wanting to avoid the dash panels here. The issue with that in this section for me is, while it is possible to blue jump through everything here, the way they're spaced makes it very difficult to kick to avoid being hit by it, and also keep the full speed of the blue gem. And the matter of fact is that actually the dash panels here put you on a pretty consistent course with quite decent speed. So I actually do recommend using the dash panels in that section. I do, and I still do, because it's a lot more consistent than using any other sort of route. Now, it's not the same case here. The dash panels all there are quite slow, and so you want blue gem, but it's not a necessity to, you know, keep a run. Okay, this strat here is quite useful, as these magnetic tubes here bring forth magnetic balls from around the area. As you can see, if I do this, they all sort of cling on to here. And that can cause quite a lot of lag when going on the first, when kicking from that one over there. So I recommend bouncing on top of it to deactivate it before you hit into Knuckles' section, because in that case, you reduce quite a bit of lag, and it doesn't involve having to go around with a sky gem or whatnot. And so it's, in my opinion, the quickest route and the safest route. If you can manage to land on top of that, that is. It can be quite difficult. Apologies for that, I got a message from someone, so let's continue on. There is one other strat I want to make of note in Aquatic Base before I go on to the other levels that I can select from the exile. Which is this section coming up right here. Now, the typical route that I think most people have been taught is to try and clip through this corner, to avoid having to go through there and waiting for the thing to come up. So you do something like this, where you need the height is unpredictable in that situation, but essentially you skip having to go through this semi-long sort of enemy section. I twisted my tongues there, sorry. Didn't know exactly what to say. It is actually, in my case, at least the way I think, more efficient to do this upcoming route that I'll show. Since the height you get from the clip can vary quite a bit, although bouncing immediately before is, helpful. I recommend instead doing as I failed to do there. Let me just focus a bit more on the game. Instead of doing the clip at the side, I recommend just going through the stage normally and hitting double bouncing and then attacking the pulley, because that is a lot quicker. Also, that happens sometimes. Be wary of what 06 can do to you. I think that's a lot quicker. Because you can blue gem immediately as you reach up, and also a lot more consistent, because there's no potential loss because of a failed clip or lack of height. So yeah, that's my recommendation for how you should derust and a few tips for Aquatic Base. Now, what I'm going to go on to next is the unbuffered loop skip in Dusty Desert. Now, if any of you have seen Liam's tutorial, you'll know that he shows this same skip, but without buffering. Or with buffering, I should say, excuse me. And it was recently found that you can do this completely without buffering, but it does involve quite a quick homing attack. So a good place to practice homing attacking is actually the rest of the stage, because you get a lot of good timing with Elise and Sonic. You need sort of a 1-2. I should have held up. 1-2 sort of pattern for a lot of the things, and that's exactly the sort of pattern you need to do this skip and buffering. So you keep the same way. You go through this automated section and hold RT when you want to hit that, and go align the same way. When you arrive at the same position as you need to, just keep on moving forward, I'd recommend, instead of stopping, and then double tap A really quickly, as I failed to do there. So we just restart and try that again.
Hold on tight.
I tend to do this quite in quick succession, so pausing sometimes can really get me out of my zone. But going through the normal route, waiting for the bar to load, all that good stuff. I almost had it there. Essentially, you want to do that same 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 sort of motion here, at the same place you would normally in Liam's, and essentially that leads to you getting the same exact time save. The issue is, though, and I recommend for new runners to actually not do this strat, because the time save it has is minimal, and you need to be very quick with the unbuffered skip, so you can't pause and just wait around for it to happen. You'll waste more time that way than just going the normal route, which the normal route is just going through the loop and then homing attacking up that hill in the background. So my recommendation is, if you aren't really content with how quick you can homing attack, that you just go through the loop normally. If you are, try for the unbuffered one first, if you think you can get it quickly. The buffered one. Excuse me, words twisted. Do the unbuffered one first, and then do the unbuffered one if you feel like you're quick enough. It really just takes a lot of time to hone in on how to mash A in this game. And so that's how you do the unbuffered pause skip. Or the unbuffered loop launch, excuse me. So now I'm going to go into White Acropolis to show something really important with the board. And with, instead of just with the board, with the camera. Now, I noticed a lot of people in the 06 community really don't take into account the camera when doing the run. And so, there are 3 methods of manipulating the camera in this game. Now, I'm going to show them all in quick succession before I go on to show how it's useful. The first one is the right stick. So the right stick enables you to move in any direction, and it's quite useful if you want to have free motion, or nearly free. No, pretty much free. And you can do all 360 degrees, up and down, left and right. Works all well. Then there is there is the left trigger, which these are the 2 things most runners know about, and most runners take into account. The left trigger will center the camera behind Sonic, which is quite useful in certain sections of the game where you need a really sharp turn, like in the beginning of Wave Ocean, where you need to hit the pillar. I always use LT there, and if you're just wanting to see where you are again, LT is quite useful when doing turns. And the third and often forgotten camera manipulation is the right and left buttons, or bumpers, which allow for 360-degree movement in either the left or they're turning towards the left or turning towards the right. So LB will turn tilt the camera like this towards the left, and this will tilt it towards the right bumper. So the thing about Sonic as well is that he'll follow the camera. So currently I'm tilting the camera right, but I'm holding forward. But as you can notice, I'm going in a slight circle. So while I'm holding the camera forward, while I'm tilting the camera and still holding forward, Sonic goes relative to the camera. And as a result, this means some pretty cool manipulations that you can do. For example, here, I always use the right shoulder button to slightly adjust and just hold forward the entire time. Which essentially means I'm turning with the camera, rather than turning with my control stick. I might be making subtle adjustments with my control stick, but I'm actually tilting and turning Sonic the majority of the time with just the camera. And that is very useful on certain sections like those where there are quite tight corners. I screwed up Char's speed, but that's all I really needed to see. It's quite useful to maneuver around certain snowboard sections. And by that I mean the 2 snowboard sections in the game. I'll show it again here in Crisis City, where I have a few strats to talk about here. I'm just going to go through the entirety of Crisis City, simply because I need to show something at the very end, and hopefully I can show it. Now, Crisis City is where the usefulness of the bumpers really shows. Not to mention, it's much more controllable if you hold down A the majority of the time in Sonic's, while snowboarding. Here I use the left bumper to turn around right bumper, because it's very difficult to maneuver the camera. Okay, I'm going to restart the stage, but essentially that's how right and left bumpers sort of work. And they're very useful when trying to navigate very tight corners in Sonic 06, at least for snowboarding. In other locations they're a bit less useful. So this is now the other speed cap glitch in Crisis City, and this is quite difficult to do very quickly, but it is quite simple as well. Now the way that I approach it is, you see the bottom corner here of this jump area. You want to jump around here when you're going through it, and you want to slow down ever so slightly when going through it, because if you go too quickly you will overshoot the edge of the jump and then just fall to your death. So what I do is I hold forward, I hold back slightly, and then I hold forward again and let go of A. This is pretty consistent most of the time. I've rarely missed the jump now ever since I've done that, because simply slowing down just makes it a lot easier. And I think that everyone should try and just slow down a little bit there, to the point where it's, reasonable. Because if you go too quickly, you will overshoot the jump. Now, at that turnpike there, it is super useful to use the bumpers there as well, because it's pretty consistent, and I just screwed up the first part. It's pretty consistent since the camera moves about the same rate as you turn, and that pretty much means you can just hug the edge, hug the rim, and go through the stage fine. I'm just going to play through Crisis City now for a little bit, just to get to points where I want to talk about stuff. See, I barely made it there, but I am slower. So there is a slight speed loss when slowing down, but it's pretty much a necessity. You can try for it without stopping, but it will be extremely difficult, if not impossible. It is faster to go through the laggy fog section. That's been determined through timing and trials. Even though there is slight lag, it is overall quicker than going in the other direction. Okay, now, there was a recent thing found here that Sharu did, which is that it is essentially immediately as you finish, immediately as you land, you want to jump, hold the direction towards the end of the rail, and homing attack. It's quite difficult. Sometimes I find it maybe inconsistent. If you are a bit slow with homing attacking, then you won't reach it. And if you get the angle wrong, you also won't reach it. You can still fall, and reach the rail you need to. So, if you feel like doing a bit of a risk, and I don't know if it really saves that much time, it saves probably 1 or 2 seconds. If you feel like doing that much of a risk, I'd recommend it, but for new runners, I'd recommend just jumping off the rail and landing onto this one. So I'm just going to show a few things. There's a bit later in this section that I want to talk about, which I think is quite difficult, or not quite difficult, I should say. There is a new thing I was testing out, and I think it might be faster. So, the strat is like normal, you jump here. I'd recommend jumping towards the middle, or towards the tower rather than away, because that is the least distance, and it's always been consistent for me if I hit sort of the bottom right corner. There's no consistent way to skip these springs here, but you can skip them. It tends to be from just the speed you enter the spring at, and just sort of luck. Here you want to hold forward, lest you fall off. Even though it's an automated section, the game will not put you onto the spring if you don't hold forward there. So here's the section I want to talk about in terms of the newer strat. Usually people would go up, click through this box, and go onto the spring, which is not what I want to do. I tested it, and I think it's slightly faster to instead spin dash, homing attack this dude, and then just hit the spring. They're about the same pace, but I think that one's more consistent because I've had issues clipping through that box before. And you can try both. I think that the rail might actually be easier, since you don't have to do any meticulous timing with the A button. But it's fair play for anyone who wants to do either strat, much like balancing or homing attacking onto the enemy in Kingdom Valley, which I'll show later. This section, there's nothing I really want to say about this section. It's quite simple, quite normal. Everything that Liam's run did really just remained the same. I homing attack that enemy and just go into the spring. I don't fall into the ground. Be careful with spin dashing, by the way. You don't want to hold in any directions, because then you'll do the anti-grav. You don't want that. Now there is a way to whoa, I screwed up there. My bad. Gotta judge your distances sometimes in 06 really well, and I didn't. So there is a way to actually skip, and it involves a really precise angle being held, so I don't really recommend it. I didn't do it that time, but I'll try it a few more. Of going from the second enemy directly to the spring. It's possible, but it's very difficult. There's a similar one in Kingdom Valley. I couldn't do it that time. It's possible. I would not recommend trying for it, because you'd probably just lose it in the end. It's sort of a precise angle that needs to be held in order to basically say that the spring is closer than the enemy, and that can be quite difficult to do sometimes. So I recommend just going through the normal chain of enemies there. Now, I want to talk about something here with Mach speed, and sort of a misconception that's been about, I think, for how quick you go. Now, in 06, there is something with the speed cap that's quite a bit funky, and that's the fact that when holding the control stick, the game sets a predetermined speed to be your max, And that can be anywhere it's a decent speed, mind you, but it's not the fastest that you can actually go. Certain moves, like the light dash and a Mach speed, actually go quicker than what the speed cap allows. So, in many of the cases, in the Mach speed, unless you're absolutely in front of an obstacle of some sort, you don't want to hold the control stick at all. You want to light dash and let the trails of rings guide you where you need to go. So, apologies, I'm getting more messages still. Okay. So in this case, I don't hold anything for the first quite a few minutes. I hold it here so I can move to the next ring trail, but this is all just pressing X and just waiting for the time. When stuff like that comes up, you need to move. And you want to basically keep it... You want to keep Sonic... Sonic speed will dissipate after a certain amount of time. And so you want to play a good... You want to be a good judge of when that speed will stop. It'll stop after around 4 to 5 seconds. As you can see here... Yeah, that was more like 2, but... Essentially, that speed leads to, you have about 3 to 4 seconds of a faster light dash speed until Sonic reverts to normal walking in the Mach speed. And so you just need to make time when you want to hit the control stick so that it's the most efficient. But you're keeping your hand off the control stick for the majority of the time at Mach speed, ideally. Radical Train is the one outlier in that regard because most of the time you can't. The turn at the very beginning, you want to hold the control stick, because otherwise you will fall, you will essentially hit a death barrier, because you can't move quickly enough. So, I'm going to show one other thing in Crisis City before I end Crisis City, and that is the alternate strat at the very end. Now, if Sonic gets hit by a car, like Sonic did there, it is actually quicker to turn towards your left and die like that. Because the tornado will be further back. I did not do it properly here. You want to dive further up. You want to dive further up around the part before the camera locks again. Or just as the camera locks, you want to turn towards your left, and then bank far, far left. Because eventually Sonic will just register a death. But the thing is, his momentum will stay, and you can go directly into the goal ring. Now, the tornado doesn't update until Sonic's position is around where it needs to be. And so the tornado will be far back and towards the right, according to the results screen. And as a result, the lag is significantly reduced before being significantly peaked. But overall, still, the gain and difference is about 2 seconds faster than a normal entrance into the goal ring. The issue with that is the goal ring... if you have retained full speed and weren't hit by a car on the way into the goal ring, it is actually faster just to do the normal route, because you waste about 4 seconds dying. But the thing is, this is essentially a nice safe strat, or a good save in case you do get hit. And it's fairly easy to pull off, so I'd recommend giving it a few tries and seeing how it goes for you. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is in Kingdom Valley. Now, Kingdom Valley has a few strats that I want to talk about, I believe. And that's regarding the introduction, the intro part, and a few other sections. So, in Kingdom Valley, at the very beginning, Liam recommends spin dashing and then jumping over this little rock, this sort of wall that's placed there, and, you know, the ruins over here. So he would do is spin dash and then jump, as such. And then wait to fall, and then holding attack at the right time. Now, I found that to be a bit inconsistent and difficult, whereas my strat, I simply holding attack above the branch and then jump again. Doing this as well, you can land quite quickly. Notice how I actually attack the robots there, instead of going around them, because I think it's just quicker. And as a result, those are the few differences in strats I do. Not to mention, while the bridge here is faster, going over that bridge, it is by far more consistent to do this trick ring strat. and also less laggy, although the lag does not impede
Going up.
the time advantage of the bridge strat. So I generally go for the trick ring. Now this section is all normal, except I do something that's slightly different here, which saves about a second, but can be quite risky if you don't judge it quite right. Now here, the eagle normally takes you up to the top, and you eventually hit the loading zone, but the loading zone here actually extends quite far down. So, about when he's here, so when the camera is directly side-on to Sonic and the eagle, is when I jump out of the eagle and homing attack. I failed to do that quickly because I was a bit too focused on explaining how it works, but I do that because it's slightly quicker if you get it first try. You can do it slightly earlier as well, but you just basically want to judge Sonic's homing attack distance to land into the load zone as soon as he jumps out. I'm going to go through this next part. This next part has no real major differences. I don't actually use the bumpers here much. I continue to use the control stick because in midair it's much easier to adjust using the control stick than the bumpers, because the control stick moves relative to how fast you move it, unlike the bumpers, which move at a set speed. Now with this section, you want to actually pull far to the left, because the trigger's actually there. When I was originally learning this, I actually learned it just going straight forward, which is not the case. You don't want to do that, because you can potentially miss the trigger altogether and then die. So bank left after going through the arc. Sorry, I'm a bit tired. Now, spin dashing. Spin dash clips in this section. First of all, for that part, I generally use both the blue and the control stick, because you can blue gem into the dash panel, but you miss the second dash panel, so you're slightly slower. So I try to aim myself so I'm using the blue gem, but also moving down so I hit both dash panels. Not necessary, but it's just how I do it, generally. So, spin dash clips. A fairly consistent way that I've noticed is the homing attack and then spin dash through. That is very useful for that first one, and I've pretty much never really taken more than 2 attempts in a run to try and get that. So I recommend homing attacking when facing about the right angle, and then actually doing it for real the second time. You want to be very careful with these, because you can fall off, as I've done before. This is the, when I was mentioning in Crisis City there was a way to skip certain enemies. This is the section. So here, and like that. You have to angle Sonic quite different than you normally would. It's slight left, but if you get too far to the left, you actually die. So, I would recommend just keeping it safe and going through all 3. Okay, second homing attack clip is slightly towards this, so you want Sonic partially being on the wall and partially being on the door, not directly facing the door, because it is slightly left, or slightly more right than one would expect. Here, I try to avoid both enemies if I can, and I homing attack at the peak of Sonic's jump, towards the, I suppose, like, the, the columns that stick out from the bottom of the ground. Or tower, I should say. So that's a very, in my opinion, it's more consistent than doing the light dash, because the light dash can lead to you accidentally using the bounce bracelet. And then this clip here. This clip's quite precise, and can be quite difficult to get. But it is a slight... You can see, like, you almost got it there. There's a slight left. I'm gonna get some rings because I'm gonna lose this if I don't. DS's strat uses this, which is slightly more consistent. Slightly, not that much. But generally I go through the door, just because I've learned it like that. As you can see, that's really close. You'll know it when you can sort of feel it when Sonic's got it, and it can be quite difficult. You want to practice it quite frequently, that last door clip is probably the hardest. The first one's the easiest, the second one's okay. Now here, I'm not holding the control stick until I hit an obstacle pretty much. Or when I have to jump or move direction like that. So here, I'm pressing X and not holding anything, pressing X and not holding anything. Now I'm holding something. You can see when the camera shifts back towards Sonic. So like that. I hold X, I don't hold anything until here. It's essentially it's a waiting game that you want to play with doing the light dashes in the Mach speeds, because you essentially want to know, oh, am I good to, hold again without losing any speed? And so that's how I recommend doing it. I don't hold anything here. And that's how you do Kingdom Valley. One point of note I want to make about this is that sometimes the scores given in the ILs, in the act trial, are actually different than the scores you get in the real episode mode. And the issue with that is you want to avoid getting S ranks, but the ILs themselves may not be the best indicator for that. So keep caution. I know Kingdom Valley gives a higher time bonus in the stages, in the ILs, or in the act trial, than it does in the actual story mode. So you can be a bit more risky in terms of the amount of rings that you pick up at the very end. Although it's still better to probably get hit before, just in case. And I've already gone through Aquatic Base. I haven't gone through Way Ocean Tales, but I don't think I need to talk about that much. Okay, I can talk about Silver for a little bit. Now, there is a way to actually make Silver go faster than the expected 25.633 that you would normally get from doing the actual strat. And that is by spin dashing. Effectively, you can abuse Silver's AI again. And normally, when he comes back up, you can see he has a point when he's jumping. There's a point when he jumps up and then teleport dashes. You can get him via spin dashing while he's jumping in the air, but it is very precise because you need to make sure that you're far enough that he actually does it, but not close enough that he actually grabs you. Like that. That was too close. I'm just gonna show this again. This is risky, so don't do this unless you feel really good about how you can spin dash. As you can see, I didn't go far away enough. So the normal route is what I recommend. But it is possible to get a slightly faster time by spin dashing. As you can see, it's not recommended, but it is possible. So I did want to make note of that. It is also sometimes possible to hit Silver despite him not jumping. That is very difficult to pull off, but it is possible. I had it happen to me on occasion, so it's not like it's out of the blue.
How about this? Take this! It's no use!
So yeah, that's Silver. Although I do not recommend that strat. As you can see, I failed to do it despite having 6 attempts. It is a strat you can indeed do if you feel risky enough, which I don't really recommend most beginners, and not even many experienced learners should actually do. Hey, here we go with the last one I want to show in this mission. Actually, no, there's 2 I want to show in this file, and that is the rock launch strat in Egg Genesis, and the reason why I don't use Green Gem. So, there is a new strat that's different from Liam's for Egg Genesis, and this is the rock launch. Now, the rock launch has been a strat that's been known for quite a few years now, but we've never really incorporated it into runs because we never really typically figured out how it worked, or a consistent setup for it. But there is a consistent setup for this one rock here in Egg Genesis, which means you can nearly always get a good position such that you can jump directly onto the head of Egg Genesis. Now I'm going to show this quite slowly, because you do need to do this fairly quickly in order to get it in an efficient time.
You think you can intimidate me with just your...
You want to stand on the middle of the rock or so, and then slowly kick up towards the top right. That was flawed.
You think you can intimidate me with just your size? Come on.
That was also flawed. As you can see, these are really bad attempts. But you wanted to hit towards this point here. Really slowly. So essentially you're moving slightly up.
Let's see what you can do.
Like that, but at a different position.
Intimidate me with just your size? Come on.
If you do it too far up, you'll get that, and you'll fall off, and the rock won't launch quickly high enough.
Come on. Let's see.
As you can see, I'm not the best at this strat, nor explaining it. But it's essentially a position and timing based strategy. It is, as soon as you get a feel for how it works, it is a lot more consistent than the strat that Liam provides in his, which is the old Egg Genesis strat. You also do need to get one ring, because you need to basically get hit. So one ring is recommended. Okay, I did it just there, and as you can see, I moved slightly up, and I kicked very slowly towards the tip, and this leads to this nice, that nice sort of slow launch up, which enables Sonic to just jump off and land onto his head. It's actually a lot easier than one would expect.
Shoot him down!
And you essentially do the same strats from then on. And get the same sort of, you know, get hit, do another three hits, and essentially skip half the boss in less than 20 seconds. So, I'm going to just show a bit more practice with that. You typically want to stand around here, I believe, and then kick up. Although I don't really think about positions that much more anymore, and just sort of try over and over again.
You can intimidate me with just your size? You think you can intimidate me with just your size? Come on!
That did not work. None of these have worked so far.
With just your size? Come on! Let's see what you can do.
Yeah, that works. Although I didn't jump off quick enough. You also can move around the rock if you feel like you're going to fall off, but I'd actually recommend Wike's tutorial for this, which I'll link in the description below, because I'm not the best at explaining this at all. And lastly, Egg Wyvern, which this strat is quite difficult. Can be. It's killed many a run of mine. Quite often it's the reason why I don't do well with most of my runs. And the reason why I don't get Green Gem is because on this boss and the strat that is the very quick strat, so the 4, 5, 6 second strat, involves a lot of gem switching. And the order of the gems goes such that there's a specific order as soon as you buy them, and it sets it to that order so you can't change which gem is placed where. So the typical order, if we had blue, red, green, and sky, they would be in that order. So blue is always the first gem, then red, then green, then sky. This boss involves going from red to sky, which means that if you press RT too early, you instead do a twirl in the air, and that's not what you want. And so that's why I removed Green Gem, because that happened about 4 or 5 times in a row at times, back when I was trying to get, world record attempts for that. And so it's very difficult to try and get that efficiently. So instead, I just axed the Green Gem, because it only is used in one mission, and it saves maybe 1 or 2 seconds. And so I don't really recommend getting it, personally. If you feel like it's that necessary to complete Mission 19, then yes, do get it. But I would recommend, for any new runners, just to go through Mission 19 normally, without needing the Green Gem, which it's not really a necessity anyways. So, not to mention it saves from you having to buy another gem, which does waste a little time in of itself, but not much. So, I'm going to try and show Egg Wyvern really quickly without... Oh yeah, another good tip that I don't think many people think about too often. The game actually skips 2 gems if you hold the right on the D-pad, the right button on the D-pad or whatever, and pause while loading to the next section.
Right back at
and you'll
ya. I'll
pause,
finish this
you'll
here.
let go, and you'll be on the red gem. Or you'll be on no gem, like I was.
Right back at you. I'll finish this here.
As you can see there, it sets it immediately to red, usually. It can be a bit finicky at times, depending on what button presses were registered when reloading.
Right back.
As you can see, it sometimes if you're holding the red gem while on the menu, it won't actually register the full thing, so it'll only skip one gem.
Right back at you.
Or it'll just be finicky in general. So, good way to demo that, right? But it is a real thing. It can be very useful, and it's extremely useful in ILs if you want to go immediately to red gem. So holding the D-pad right and the pause button on a load up of something, very useful. Anyways, now I'm going to load out of this, and I'm going to start an MSG run from the very beginning, so I can get the final two things I want to talk about, which are, excuse me, I should have proper grammar for all this commentary and whatnot, although I probably haven't. Majority of the stuff I want to talk about involves early stuff in the MSG run. So skipping cutscenes, that's another thing I want to talk about. I generally mash the controller during all my load screens, though only approaching when I know the load's going to be ending around. Because, well, although there are things such as the fast loads, which are a bit unpredictable, there's a general trend you'll see for load times. And so just through playing repeatedly, I've memorized pretty much all the arrow counts on most of the early screens, not really much of the later ones, because I don't see that too often. For example here, Tails should have about 4 arrows and then a bit of another one. So here's the 4th arrow, here's the bit of the next, and then you can skip. So you know exactly when to mash. You'll pick this up over time, or anyone will pick this up over time, just from playing a lot of the actual run. And you'll notice, okay, I see there's 4 arrows, I'm expecting 4 arrows. If there's 3, wow, you should probably, continue the run, because you're probably going to get world record anyways. If you have 5, it's much slower, and then you probably should reset your console. And there's that sort of consistency that you can have with load times. You might think you can do nothing during them, but it's actually quite useful as a measure of how well you're doing and how well your loads are. Not to mention, it can prevent you from having to mash the entire time like I do sometimes, just because I don't want to risk anything. But it's a clever way of thinking. I'm just going to get to Wave Ocean, which is what I want to talk about. Not bad, not bad. You want to aim, if you're a beginner, I think you want to aim for like a 17 there, honestly. Best times you can get around 11 and 12. Oh man, I'm so tired. It's getting more and more difficult, but I'm just going to upload the full file without editing anything, so you get to see all of it. Isn't that beautiful? So we're approaching Wave Ocean. We're approaching the Wave Ocean.
Hey.
Now, someone asked me a while ago, I think it was Gas, asked me why sometimes we kick in 06. And not only is it just because of invincibility, but it's also because of the fact that a kick retains the speed that you last moved at. So if I kick in place, obviously I don't move at all. If I move a little bit and then I kick, I move at the same speed that I walked at. If I run and then kick, I kick at the speed that I run. If I spin dash and then kick, I kick at the speed I spin dash. And that can be very useful for retaining speed in very tight corridors. That's why in for example, Egg Cerberus, why you do a full spin dash and then kick at the very end. So you actually go further than you would normally. And that means a better chance of getting the tail at the right time. So, now that we're in Wave Ocean, I'm going to do the way that I do the Wave Ocean skip, which I don't really have a particular setup for it. other than going through, you know, the typical sort of, hey, go onto the loop, whatnot. I don't do anything with jumping or positioning the camera or whatnot. I sort of eyeball it now because I've gotten a sense of where to stand usually. Watching this screw up. You see right there is where I use LT, because it is very difficult to get the camera turned around in that amount of time. So it can be very useful for actually, you know, setting up everything you need to and making sure that the camera faces where you want it to. Now I usually stand around here, actually, this brown spot, and I point Sonic towards the corner, the edge of this sort of brown texture. I point Sonic towards the cave, although slightly left, usually, and place him in the middle of the loop, and then let go, like this. Which does the exact same thing as other people have done with Liam's strat or DSS's strat, which I was assuming are quite consistent, but I've never really had a use for them. Simply because I think I can eyeball it quicker.
Whoa!
Usually. I mean, sometimes it doesn't really work out, which is okay. Oh, by the way, here, you want to hold the camera down and go very far towards the right. So that is a constant, at least to me, that's been consistently a consistent way to avoid the bridge to spawn. So holding the camera down, which will make it a bird's eye view, and going as far into the bridge as you can towards the right. And so that will be very, very helpful for people who find that they're wondering, oh, why does the bridge keep spawning? It keeps on losing my runs. That is a way to avoid it. I'm almost certain. Because I've never had any issue with the bridge ever since I started doing that. Okay, now we're at the Mach speed. There's two things I want to explain here. Obviously, I've already talked about how the game works with speed caps. And one thing I didn't quite mention is that the dash panels also work the same way. I'll explain this really quickly before I actually do the Mach speed. Dash panels in 06 essentially take the speed that you enter them into and then do some sort of formula on them to get some sort of output speed. And spin dashing into them is one way of also breaking the speed cap. So if you spin dash into a dash panel and don't hold anything, you'll go further and faster. Though it's not always the best to do that. And it doesn't always work. For example, at the beginning of Flame Core, at the beginning of Radical Train, it is faster to hold something because you can't spin dash into those, you can't spin dash really easily into those, introductory, dash panels. So, holding something and having some sort of speed is better than having no speed whatsoever. So, take that into account as well. Anyways, the Mach speed. So, I don't hold anything here, and, okay, I still got it. I don't hold anything until right here, and then I keep on just pressing X and letting the ring dashes take me where I want to go, unless I'm about to hit something. Then I slightly adjust, but I don't do much more than that. Here, jump.
What?
Ring dash. And this is where I hold the most. I'm still not holding anything. I'm letting the ring dashes take me where I need to go. Because they don't dissipate until quite a long while after. So that's how you retain the best speed. Okay, now here, the jump. Now, there is sort of an arc to Sonic's jump in the Mach speed, and holding A obviously gets you higher. So, what you need to do here is not what I did. That's a way to die, because it's sort of stressed there, honestly. I'm just going to play through this and try not to pause too often. I'll explain it here. That is slightly faster, the jump there, but it's not a game changer if you lose it. LT is used there as well, quite useful. Whoops, that's a mistake, but nothing we can't correct. So, essentially, you want to jump. You want to sort of practice how you jump and how far Sonic can jump. Usually here is when I jump. So I don't really know how to quantify it, honestly, because it's quite difficult to quantify such a number, like there's such a simple thing as that. But it's about, I would say, 2 seconds until you feel like Sonic's gonna run into the wall.
Just made it.
But you have to hold A fully. you need to make sure you hold a full A there. You know, do a full jump, because if you just tap the jump, you won't get high enough. So just get a sense for how quickly Sonic jumps there, and keep on practicing, really. I have no easy way of quantifying when to jump, other than you want to jump earlier rather than later. Although I suppose you could also... No, you could jump later, but you need to have just enough height. So, I can't really put a time on it, honestly. Okay, now here's the last section I want to talk about, which is the Egg Cerberus clips. Now, traditionally, we've just done it sort of this way, because Sonic went on the... Generally, Sonic, when he's jumping, and if you're on... So, sorry, I should try to calm down and try to think of this more often, or more thoroughly. When characters do a move that propels them forward, while on the same plane as the ground, they will move as if they're running with the speed of the attack. For example... Okay, that didn't work. It's easiest to show with Silver and Shadow. Going up hills and such as Shadow, that involves the same sort of trick. Teleport sliding as Silver involves the same trick, and Sonic can do it as well if he hits on the last frame before touching the ground, because pause buffering will keep Sonic... Pause buffering, as here, will keep Sonic slightly above the ground, as you can see, before homing attacking. Unlike Shadow, where it keeps you on the ground for some reason. But doing it the first frame before landing on the ground... If I can get this right... will actually make Sonic run. And that can allow him to clip through certain things. Like that. See? Like that. That's what I was trying to go for. That's what you're trying to aim for when doing these clips. And it's very precise because it is a frame-perfect trick. So it's not the easiest thing in the world. So if you're having difficulties with that, there's actually a pretty neat trick found here. Where you want to essentially face this wall and spin dash through. It can be slower, especially since there's a lot of lag in this area. But you can also spin dash back out via this end, I believe? Yes. So if you are having issues doing the clips, which are faster in the end due to the reduced lag, if you are having trouble doing them, you can always just spin dash instead. So I think that's a very useful, safer strat, or easier strat, if you're having difficulty with the clips, to do that. I think it's overall easier to... If you want my recommendation for the easiest sort of clips, because that clip tends to be easier for me for some reason, this one, than any of the other two. So I'd recommend spin dashing into the corner like this, hitting the mirror, going to here, and doing the trick. Because you also avoid the lag, and then coming back here and doing it again. Because you need to do this one, regardless. Although, I know it is possible to, like, slide through this from the outside, but it's not possible through here. Or through the inside, you can slide under it, but it's not possible through there, I don't think. And also, one other thing of note that I want to say, is something I found a while back, which is in this room. And it is technically faster, because you could basically skip 2 with just 1, but it is extremely difficult. And essentially it involves this corner, and doing the same trick as you would with the traditional method. Landing on the last frame and homing attacking. Which is like that. So you clip through it and then go back into the thing, but the thing is, you very quickly also soon move out of bounds, which leads to your death. And obviously, that's very difficult to avoid. You can hold forward after you do the clip, and just narrowly miss falling in. Not to mention the angle itself is very difficult to hit as well. You see, I'm trying many different angles and it's not working. But it would technically skip both both having to clip back out of bounds and having to clip right back in. So technically, it would be faster, but it's extremely difficult to get that in time. And now that I've recorded over an hour of footage, I think it's time to say thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this cleared some issues up. I know I wasn't really the most concise or constructed person with this, since I literally just talked while the game was happening. Well, I was just throwing ideas in my mind, but hopefully it gives people a good oversight of some of the new strategies and some of my personal tips and advice when playing through Sonic's story in Sonic 06. So, thank you guys, and hope you enjoyed